The way the couch is lying, it forms a crawl space against the wall just big enough for the two of us. I pull him in there and lie on my belly beside him. I pull an old crate over toward the edge of the couch and look through the wooden slats. They're closer now, and I'm sure they've heard us because they've stopped talking and turned their flashlights off. I hold the gun in both hands and wait. I've never fired a gun before, and I don't know how many bullets are left in this one. I think we're going to die here. "Ridley, please, don't do this." The voice echoes in the dark and comes from up above me. "We can work this out." I don't answer. I know it's a trick. Nothing about this can be worked out now. We're all too far gone. There have been plenty of chances to close my eyes and go back to the sleep of my life as it was, but I haven't taken any of them. Do I wish now that I had? It's hard to answer that question as the wraiths move closer. "6, he whispers. "What?" "You have 6 bullets left." 2. Until recently, my life has been fairly uneventful, which isn't to say I was just plodding along when the single occurrence I'm about to share with you turned my world on its axis, but now that you mention it, that's not too far off. And yet, I have come to believe that it was not one event precisely, but an infinite number of small decisions that led me into the circumstances that have so changed me and those around me. People have died, lives have been altered. The truth has not so much set us free as it has ripped away a carefully constructed facade, leaving us naked to begin again. My name is Ridley Jones, and when all of this started, I was a 30-ish writer living alone in an East Village apartment I'd rented since I was a student at NYU. It was a 3rd-floor walk-up in a small building on the corner of 1st Avenue and 11th Street, above a pizzeria called 5 Roses. With its black-gated front door, its dim hallways and sagging floors, its ubiquitous aroma of garlic and olive oil, it had a certain kind of charm. And beyond that, it was miraculously cheap at $800 a month. If you know New York, you know that rent like that is almost impossible, even for an 800-square-foot junior one-bedroom that looks out over a back courtyard where dogs barked for most of the day, even when the only view is of the tenants in another building living their parallel lives with as much self-importance as I lived my own. But it was a good place, and I was happy there. Even when I could afford something better, I stayed, just for the comfort of a familiar space and the proximity to the best pizza in New York City. You might be wondering about my name. My father, Dr. Benjamin Jones, a New Jersey pediatrician living in a quaint and comfortable Victorian house with my mother, a former dancer-cum housewife whom he has loved since the day they met at Rutgers University in 1960, has always lamented his plain last name. He thought of it as a name you give when you don't want people to know who you are, like Doe or Smith. Growing up, he was embarrassed by the ordinariness of it. But he didn't think he was ordinary, and when it came time to name his children, he didn't want them to feel that they were expected to be ordinary either. He gave me the name Ridley after Ridley Scott, the filmmaker. He always was a bit of a film buff. He thought this was a very unusual first name for a girl, something special, and that it would encourage me to lead an extraordinary life. And he felt that as a writer living in New York City, I was doing just that. When I look back on my life, I marvel at how it hasn't been the major decisions that have most impacted its course. It's been the tiny, seemingly inconsequential ones. But, as they say, the devil's in the details. Well, I'll get to it then. It was a Monday morning, autumn going on winter in New York City. The Indian summer had passed, and the first chill had settled in the air. It was my favorite time of year, when the oppressive heat and humidity trapped within the concrete walls of the city lifted, leaving behind a place that was new in its briskness. When I woke that Monday, I could tell by the meager amount of light that struggled in through my windows that it was a gray day. I could see that the glass was freckled with raindrops. It was this small detail that affected my next decision. I reached from beneath the down of my comforter for the cordless phone that rested by my bedside. Dr. Rifkin's office, came a voice as flat and hard as a city sidewalk. And this is Ridley Jones, I said, faking a hoarseness in my throat. I've come down with a bad cold. I can still come in, but I don't want to make the dentist sick. I added a pathetic cough for emphasis. With that, I was free. Breakfast at Bubby's? I said when he answered. There was a pause where I heard him turn over in bed. A few months ago, I might have been beside him. Don't you have a job? He asked. I'm between assignments at the moment, I said with mock indignation. It was true. I was between freelance assignments, but it wasn't an issue for a number of reasons. What time? He said, and in his voice I heard the sad mingling of hope and regret that I often heard when we spoke. Give me an hour? Okay, see you then. Zachary was the man I should have married, the one I was supposed to marry. Our lives have been intertwined since we were children. My parents loved him, maybe more than they did my own brother. My friends loved him. His sandy blonde hair and bright eyes, his fit, athletic body, his successful private pediatric practice, the way he treated me. Even I really liked him. But when it came down to decision time, I balked. Why? Fear of commitment? A lot of people believe that about me, but I don't think so. All I can say is, Forever and Zachary just didn't seem compatible. My parents, and Zach's mother, Esme, whom I sometimes felt closer to than my own, were still floored by my decision. That morning, Zach and I were trying to be friends. I had ended our relationship a little over 6 months earlier, and we were still struggling past his disappointment and injured feelings, and pride, I thought, toward what I hoped would be an enduring friendship. It was awkward, but hopeful. Like I said, I was between assignments. I had just finished a profile on Rudy Giuliani for New York Magazine, for which I had been paid quite nicely. I had a couple of other irons in the fire, articles I'd pitched to editors who knew me at Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, and The New York Times. As someone who had been working regularly for nearly 7 years, I was confident that one of those ideas would turn into an assignment. Though later, I hoped, rather than sooner. I was comfortable that way. At first, the freelance writing gig had been a bit of a struggle. If my parents hadn't subsidized my meager income when I graduated from college, I probably would have had to move back home with them. But as I have a modicum of talent, am a professional who meets deadlines, and am a writer without much of an ego who takes editing well, I made a reputation and some good contacts, and the rest is just a lot of hard work. Even with that, I might not be as comfortable if my Uncle Max hadn't died nearly 2 years ago. Max was an uncle who wasn't actually an uncle, but really my father's best friend from Detroit, where they had been boys together. Both sons of auto workers, my father and Max lived in the same suburb for 18 years. While my father came from a solid home, my grandparents hard-working blue-collar people, Max's father was an alcoholic and a physically abusive man. One night when Max was 16, his father's violence turned deadly. Max's father beat his mother into a coma from which she never awoke. Rather than let him become a ward of the state, my grandparents took Max in and somehow managed to help both him and my father through college. Uncle Max was an alcoholic, but because he was a happy drunk, no one seemed to mind. The Christmas Eve before last, after leaving my parents' house, where we'd all spent the evening together, he never returned to his home. He had apparently stopped off at a bar after leaving us, then several hours later got into his black Mercedes sedan and proceeded to drive off a bridge and into the frigid water below. By accident or design, we'll never know, though a lack of skid marks indicated that there was no last-second slamming of the brakes. It was icy that night. That might have been it, the rubber of the tires unable to find purchase on the slick road. Or perhaps he passed out at the wheel, never saw it coming. We prefer to think of it as an accident, since the alternative would haunt us all. In his will, he'd left most of his money to my parents and to the Maxwell Allen Smiley Foundation. He'd created this foundation long before I was born, and it existed to fund myriad charities that offered assistance and shelter to battered women and abused children. But he also left a large sum of money to me and my brother, Ace. With the help of an accountant, my share of the money had been solidly